All right, what is up, people? Welcome back to Blue Chip Prospect for another ranking video. Today we get into my top 15, and since I don't have much else to say, let's get this started right away. All right, so let's start with the number 14, and at 14 I have Tom Willander, and honestly, I kind of had to stop myself there. I know that everybody has Reinbacher or Simashev as their first D in their rankings, but I am so close to have Willander as the first D on my board. Stats-wise, it's not really impressive with 25 points in 39 games in the Swedish under-20 league, but he did get over a point per game in the recent U18s while being a brick wall defensively. One of the reasons why I have him over Simashev is that we actually got to see him against the best players in his age group, which we couldn't with Simashev, and the MHL being so all over the place from one team to another that I find it hard to evaluate. They both show a lot of similarities though. Great skating in both cases, good manipulation and retrievals at the blue line or to shake off the forecheckers. They both play physical game when they give the outside, and in both cases they can close on the attacker in the blink of an eye. They're both not first power play type of defender, at least at this moment, but are comfortable with the puck on their stick at the blue line or to start the breakout. In Willander's case, I don't think he's a dynamic playmaker from the offensive blue line in, but he's such a good and dynamic defender that his projected floor is a top 4 defender in my opinion. He's already very good at opening shooting lanes and putting the puck on net and creating rebounds in the slot, but I would like him to develop his vision. If I was a development coach of the team drafting him, I'd tell him to work on creating passing lanes in the ozone with his skating, the same way that he already does for his shooting. I think the skill is there, but the sense isn't. But the skating, the defense, the physicality, the transition awareness, the complete level of a future top 4 player is already there. If he can add one more offensive tools to his box, he's going to have a very, very good NHL career. At number 13, I have Matthew Wood. Wood had a phenomenal season with Connecticut with 34 points in 35 games in the NCAA and playing almost 2 points per game in the U18s playing with Celebrini. Matthew Wood is an intriguing prospect. He has the skill level of a top 10 pick and the production to match it. 1 point per game at 17, 18 years old in the NCAA is no easy feat. The issue starts with his skating and ends with his skating. I also don't think it got better throughout the year, so that's not encouraging, but he's a 6'3" player, so he has that on his side. But if we separate the skating from the rest of his skills, he's a high-end talent. He has a devastating shot. UConn obviously ran their power play to let him unleash his one-timer, which is heavy and precise, but he also has a great wrister and a great snapshot. He also got better at shooting the puck in stride, which is very, very important for NHL projectability. I don't think he has the vision and the skating to be a driver on his line, but he's not a bad playmaker. He has extremely good puck skills and is very capable passer, even though he's a shoot-first type of player, and it's kind of understandable in his case. Even though he has an absolute bomb, I think his best attribute as a player is his playing tight. He's so good at keeping and handling the puck under pressure while surrounded by 2 or even 3 players trying to poke it away. He's got the tools to open lanes from the inside out while always being a very dangerous shooting option. Because of this, I think he has a chance to play a Jason Robertson light type of game, but I'm extremely scared of his skating. I didn't even include it in my top 10 scorer video because there's just so much uncertainties about his projection as a goal scorer. If he finds a way, he will be an incredible player in the NHL and a top 10 player in a redraft, but there's a very real chance that it just doesn't work whatsoever and that he can't find a way to be useful at 5v5. I have him here at 13 because the potential is there big time, but I don't think I'd take him there if I was a decision maker for an NHL team. Before I jump to number 12, if you're enjoying the content that I'm making, please take the time to like and subscribe. It helps my channel grow and it helps me reach more hockey prospect fans like you. And there you go, last defenseman in my ranking. At number 12, I have David Reinbacher. Reinbacher had a very good season in the Swiss League with 22 points in 46 games. He also was decent in the U20s and very good at the World Championship, at least at the beginning. Reinbacher has no wow factor. Nothing really stands out, but he's very projectable. He's got a good frame standing at 6'2". He skates really well. It's not high-end or elite, but it's above average for sure. He defends at a very high level, giving no space for attackers. He's physical enough. He has a good first pass and can transition the puck quickly with good and fast decision making. And he's not a negative value in the offensive zone. Does that description get you excited if you're picking in the top 10? Most likely not, I would say, but NHL teams have to factor in the risk. I don't. I can take Cristall in my top 10, but I won't have to meet with the owner if in 4 or 5 years from now, my top 10 selection still skates like a ballerina and can crack my NHL roster. Reinbacher is a safe pick. He's a safe pick to play in your top 4, and that's valuable. Where Reinbacher shine, it's in the defensive part of the game and transition. The defense will translate, I have no doubt, but I do have question about the transition though. He doesn't have those little fakes like Simashev. He doesn't have them in retrievals. He doesn't have them in transition, and he doesn't have them on the other side of the offensive blue line. To maximize his value in this aspect of the game, he will definitely need to add manipulation and misdirection to his arsenal. Without that, he will be a very reliable defensive defenseman who ships the puck to the left side defenseman to break it out. On the other hand, if he does add it to his toolbox, you now have a great two-way defenseman that will play 25 minutes a night, defend at a high level, move the puck forward quickly, that can also play in your PK and your second power play unit. I've seen a lot of people compare him to Moritz Seider. I don't see it. Seider was bigger and more aggressive on both sides of the puck, but at the same time, no one knew that Seider would become what he became. Reinbacher as the foundation of a top 4 defenseman. Now, how many tools can he add to his toolbox to push that projection higher? I don't think he needs to add that much, but he's an October 2004 guy, so time isn't really on his side. Alright, so this is where it starts to get a little bit tricky. At 11, I have Dalibor Dvorsky, but he could be anywhere from number 8 to number 11 in my opinion. In terms of stats, he had a good, not great season, scoring 14 points in 38 games in the second-tier Swedish league. He did finish the season on a high note and absolutely carried his team at the U18s with 13 points in 7 games. And one thing to consider here is that he had the same production as Matthew Wood, but he didn't have a Celebrini on his line. He did that alone and brought the best out of his teammate. Dvorsky is a very, very well-rounded player for a draft-eligible player. He makes me think of Shane Wright last season. The kind of player who plays really well on both sides of the puck, flashes very good puck skills, good playmaking with a very heavy shot. I think Wright is a little bit better because he seems to have a little more pace to his game, a little bit more playmaking, but Dvorsky is a little bit bigger and heavier on the puck. Both are very safe projection. I think Dvorsky is at the minimum a reliable middle six center who can play on the PK, second unit power play, and gets matched up against the top line. He's like the Reinbacher of centers in this draft. But on the other hand, I think he's too good offensively to top out as a middle six center, especially because of his shot. He has a very heavy shot that he can let go in a hurry. He needs no space to release a snapshot or one-timer. He's very compact. I can easily see him in the bumper position on the power play and just stuffing them pucks in like Bo Horvat keeps doing. Dvorsky is also very young, with his birthday being like today or yesterday, depending on when I'm releasing the video, meaning he has a lot of space to grow his game. He didn't meet expectations in Sweden this season, so a lot of people are down on him, but a bit like Shala, I think the Pro League was a little bit too much, a little bit too fast. I might regret putting him outside of my top 10, but it doesn't mean I don't believe in him. I think he has first-line center potential, but I also think he's most likely to settle on the second line as a two-way threat and a great 5v5 value player, a bit like Dano in LA with a better scoring touch. And finally, in the top 10, and at 10, I have Gabe Perreault. In terms of stats, everything has been said about it, but in case you weren't aware, he broke Austin Matthews' record for point in a single season. Why isn't he top 5 then? Well, because he's not really a driver, but it wouldn't be wise to bet against him, therefore 10 seems like an appropriate place. Perreault is not the best at anything in terms of skills, except maybe hockey sense, where he definitely seems to be a top 5 in this draft. He's an average, probably even a little under average skater. His shot is good, but isn't special in any way. He just knows how to score. He's not really keeping the puck and creating for his teammate. He's more like the glue on his line. He's just that player that is good at everything but isn't special, but makes life easier for everybody around him. Does Smith has that kind of season without Perreault? I don't think so for a second. One of the things that Perreault does better than everybody is like connect the dots. That's not true, but he doesn't keep the puck on his stick for a long time. He receives it from a defenseman in transition and redistributes it instantly to Smith or Leonard. He tracks back on a player, rips the puck away from him, and instantly moves the puck to Smith or Leonard. Leonard goes in the corner and retrieves the puck, send it to Perreault. Perreault will immediately redistribute it to Smith. He's always aware of his teammate. He's always aware of the connections available to him. He's always scanning the ice in preparation for an immediate redistribution or a shot. His vision and hockey sense is elite in my opinion, and he's a great puck handler. It's very hard for a team to catch him in a bad position, and even if they could, he could stick and roll his way out of it with a quick backhand forehand and pass to an open teammate. One thing that Perreault will absolutely need to is to get stronger. He is very light. He was weighted at 163 pounds at a combine, but his coach said that he was very committed to getting stronger. He gets overmatched physically a lot, and since he can't separate with his skating, he needs some muscle so he can play through contact better. The NCAA is definitely the right path for him. He will need a couple years to physically develop even if the production is there. I think he has a bright future, but I'm not sure teams will pick him in the top 10 considering his size and his skating. Also, considering he's a winger with great production but isn't driving the offense on most nights. He will likely need two competent players on his line to take advantage of his skill set. And at number 9, I have Flash McQueen. When it comes to stats, Oliver Moore didn't impress, but he spent his entire year behind the first line and played with underwhelming wingers to say the least. He still gathered 75 points in 61 games. There's basically a 0.5 point per game drop between him and the next best teammate. He played with many players from Nelsons to Ryan Fine, from Yzerman and James Higgins at the very end to Will Vogt. Yes, Yzerman and Higgins are high-end prospects for future draft, but he spent most of his time with players that first aren't even close to the level of players that Smith had the chance to play with, and second, none of them could keep up with him. Obviously, most can't keep up with him, even in the NHL, but even though some of it is on his shoulders and it's on him to learn to adapt and better control his speed, some of it is on the fact that they're just not fit to play with him. And in the end, he still ended up with a production similar to Matt Boldy or Farabee or Cutter Gauthier, so in my opinion, that's amazing. You could never argument that he was propped up by his teammates, that's for sure. On a skill level, he's the best skater in a draft, period. He's extremely explosive, he's extremely quick and fast, he's extremely agile and good on his edges. He's a beast in transition, a beast on the back check or the forecheck. There's simply nowhere on the ice where it's safe to have the puck if he's there. He has an unstoppable motor to go with his speed. He has a very good shot that can score from distance. His one-timer is powerful and accurate. Same for his snapshot. He can change the angle effectively and release in stride in a hurry. I would say that his playmaking is limited, but it's hard to judge considering the line mates he had, but he has a tendency to skate the puck in and just shoot the puck with no real chance to score because he didn't give the chance to his teammate to catch up or didn't adapt to them. He will often outskate them, just like he will often just outskate his own brain. He's not a perfect player by any means, but there's so much to work with. Yes, I would have liked to see him dominate more at the U18s. Same thing at the Four Nations in Finland. Every time I was this close to put him in the same tier as Smith, he decreased his level of play for a couple of games. Again, at the minimum, you're getting a hard-working, defensively responsible middle six center that can skate with the best of them, but there's a fair chance that you get a high-end player with more. I would have loved to get just a little more out of him to be perfectly sure about him, but he left just a little bit of doubt in my head, even though I don't know what he could have done more with the opportunity he was given. And at number 8, I have my boy Andrew Cristall. I think it's well documented by now that I'm a big fan of him. I've been one all season long and I'm not about to let go. Obviously, with that one, the stats are on my side with 95 points in 54 games, making him the third best player in point per game since the 2000-2001 season. Some people say that he had an underwhelming U18 tournament and underwhelming playoff, and I would not disagree, but was he deployed to succeed in the U18s? That's debatable. I'm not sure the bumper position on the power play is the place for him to be, and he still showed flashes of brilliance. And against Seattle in the playoff, the whole team scored 4 goals in that series. They knew that if they neutralized Cristall, they neutralized the whole team. Pretty easy game plan when you basically have an NHL team in the WHL. I already did a full scouting report on him. He was in my top 10 goal scorer. He was in my top 10 playmaker. So I'm not sure what I can add here that I haven't already said, but he's a phenomenal player. He's the Lane Hudson of 2023, a small player with questionable skating, questionable projectability, but a player that oozes skills all around. He's extremely deceptive passer, an extremely deceptive shooter. He takes the definition of deceptiveness to new heights for forward, just like Hudson did for defensemen last season. I think there's no chance he's being taken in the first 20 selections. I even think there's a great chance that he falls in the second round, but I think that he is too talented and too smart to not succeed. Does he come with a ton of risk? Yes, he does. Does he skate weird? Yes. Is he too reliant on a Mohawk stride or a 10-2 stride or however you want to call it? Yup. Does he come with many flaws? Yup. Does that change anything? No, it does not. At least not in my opinion. Just like I bet on Hudson's skills last season and placed him in my top 15, I think time will give reason to everyone who placed him high on their board. I'm willing to do the same bet with Cristall, and he comes with significantly less risk than Hudson. If there's one player that grew on me over the last couple months, it's Ryan Leonard. With 94 points in 57 games and basically 1 goal per game almost, it's hard to not like him. His point per game average put him above players like Cole Caulfield or Logan Cooley, so again, like I said, it's hard to not like him. Now, where I have an issue is the disparity between him and his line mates. There's almost 40 points between him and Perreault and 30-something points between him and Smith. So my question is, how much is he being elevated by his line mates? I don't have the answer to that, and I feel like it's a very important part of the equation. A lot of people have been throwing the Tkachuk name out there in comparison with Leonard. If he gets to that level, that's amazing, but the Tkachuks are a very special breed of hockey players. They're also bigger, and while Matthew was not as good as Cater, I believe the overall skill was higher on Matthew than it is on Leonard. After the U18s, I basically changed all my grades on him and basically elevated all of them. Too often in the season, he struck me as the hard-working player on his line that is smart enough to put himself in position to score. A good player, but not a top 10 player. The more I kept watching and the more I understood that even though his compete level is part of his game and that it's there to stay, he also has a skill game. But given his line mates, he understood that his role had to be different for his line to strike the right balance and succeed to the point that it did. He's obviously not as purely skilled as a player like Smith, but he has so many skills to fall back on that no matter what, he will be a useful player. He has a very good shot and can score from anywhere, including in tight to the net. He has a really good hands and what we could consider a power winger. He's a high compete, high motor type of player. He's physical. He's one of the best players in the draft from the outside in. His playmaking is underrated, and that's why I hope he's separated from Smith and Perreault next year so he can explore that element of his game. When I made my scouting report on him a couple months ago, I agreed with Corey Proman that Artturi Lehkonen was a very good player comparison in some way. I still agree, but not completely. I think he has a better soft skills than Lehkonen, a better shot, and a better playmaker, but he does play with the same intensity and the same non-stop motor pedal to the metal every single shift. I love how sometimes I listen or I read other people or talk with people about players, and it makes me realize that I should watch more of the player in question and pay attention to some other details of their game. It's basically what happened with Leonard. I went back to watch 1 or 2 games and I liked him more than in my previous viewings, and then I focused on him and manually tracked stats on him at the U18s and basically fell in love with him. So he went from outside my top 10, even outside my top 15 to 7 overall. So pretty decent progression if you ask me. And at number 6, I have the small but very good boy, Zach Benson. I debated many players at number 6, including Leonard or Oliver Moore. I even had Simashev there for a good little while. Benson was the best player on a team that has 2 top 11 picks from the last season. There was plenty of nights last season where he was the best player on that team even as a 16-year-old, and with this season, 98 points in 60 games, he has similar production to Draisaitl or Nugent Hopkins. If Benson was 2 inches taller or 15 pounds heavier, he would be a first overall type of talent in most years. As I guess that the straight line speed is average at best and you'd want more than that for a 5'10" player, but what I look for the most in skating for players like Benson is agility through traffic and smaller explosiveness. How quick can they jump from an open to an open pocket, or how quick can they cut back and spin on their edges and create passing lanes? How much lateral movement can they get from 1 or 2 crossover? This seems more important to me than how fast can they skate, when we already know that unless there's significant change in their stride and speed, he won't be the main puck carrier through the neutral zone. So yes, when you factor in the size and a somewhat limiting skating, he can go into the top 5, even though on a skill alone, I think he can rival players like Smith, let's say. Benson is mostly defined by his elite competitiveness and high-end hockey sense. He has, I think, the best motor in the draft. Even players like Leonard aren't that close to him. So some of his skating flaws are actually masked by how hard he's willing to push on back checks and forechecks, or by how hard he's willing to get to the corners and come out of it with possession. What I like about Benson is that we basically never get players with that kind of skill and that kind of hockey sense that actually have that kind of compete in them. It's always one or the other. He's got both, but because he comes in a smaller package, I think he drops out of the top 10 in the draft. Even if Benson scored 36 goals, I don't think he's that much of a finisher. He has a good shot and is more than willing to get to the inside to shoot it, but he's not scoring from pure power. If he's scoring on the next level, it'll be because he can see every opportunity and will get to the high danger area to score. Also because he will fake his pass and look at the receiver all the way until he releases the shot. His head, his eyes, and his hands are some of the most deceptive in the draft. He's basically never looking where he's sending the puck. Some players use manipulation with their stick handling to get bodies out of the way, which Benson does all the time, but Benson also uses his head and his eyes and adapt the release point of his pass according to bodies and stick in front of him. In the scouting report I made about him, I was talking about this one smooth motion thingy. What I basically mean by that is that even before receiving the pass, he already know where his options are, and he already looking at different player to move the sticks out of the way of the real receiver. So the reception of the puck, the transition from the release point of the next pass is all one smooth motion that was pre-calculated before the play even happened. I don't think there's a world where Benson doesn't make it to a top 6 in the NHL. He's too smart, he's too skilled, he's too competitive. There's also the fact that the manual track data by Mitch Brown at Elite Prospect places him second only behind McDavid as a playmaker in the CHL. It's only 10 games tracked, but nonetheless, he's in the 100th percentile in expected first assist per 60 and slot pass per 60. Overall, he's an elite talent that comes with elite competitiveness. Yes, he's a bit of a gamble because of size and straight line skating, but I think a lot of teams are going to regret not taking him if he falls outside the top 10. Honestly, if I'm the Habs and I absolutely don't want to pick Michkov for whatever reason at number 5, I'm 100% comfortable with taking Benson at 5, which they probably also won't do, but I think there's a real chance that Benson is a top 5 pick in a redraft in 5 or 6 years from now. Into the top 5 now, and at number 5, I have Will Smith. I will glance over the top 5 since I already talked about all of them extensively. I have a full scouting report on all of them except for Fantilli, which I talked about in my top 10 goal scorer and my top 10 playmaker video. When it comes to Smith, there's not much more he could have done to prove that he's a top 5 talent. In terms of production this season, with 127 points in 60 games and 20 points in 7 games at the U18s, I mean, this is exceptional production. It's first overall type of production. So yeah, he played with the same line mates all year long, and yes, they are all elite talents, so his stats might be propped up a bit by that factor, but you don't have to watch too many games to see why he has over 2 points per game at the program. It's not like his stats don't match the skill set, they absolutely do. Smith have some of the very, very best hands in the draft. He can keep the puck away and bait defenders with ease. He's an amazing passer who can pass the puck through multiple layers, but uses his stick and link to open up lanes and get easy look. He also has a great shot and can score multiple ways and from anywhere on the ice. His wrister is just so dangerous. He finds openings and rip a powerful and precise shot with fast and compact release. He definitely needs to work on his defense and his work rate away from the puck, but even though he doesn't project as a two-way threat down the line, I think he'll be just fine with a few years in college, and anyway, he comes with some of the highest offensive potential in the draft. That's what I would be betting on. At number 4, I have Leo Carlsson. Leo was fantastic in the SHL with 25 points in 44 games, playing meaningful minutes on a top team and a great production at the U20s and the World Championship. In my opinion, Fantilli, Carlsson, and Smith are in the same tier, and I wouldn't be surprised if any of those three ended up the second best player in the draft, and it's amazing how they are all just so different from one another. Leo is one of the best playmakers in the draft and probably the most projectable one. He already plays the game like he would need to play it in the NHL. He has extremely soft hands and can manipulate defenders with ease. He's not as flashy as Smith, but he's just as effective. The reason why I put Carlsson before Smith is first the 6'3" frame. When playing down low or on the cycle or even in puck protection, that frame will be a difference maker. But it's also how he plays the game. His entire game is centered around making it easy for his line mates to get open looks and free pocket of space. He uses his frame and his stick and link to get through traffic and attracting players on himself and getting double teamed, leaving line mates open. I mean, is there a more projectable trait than that? I don't know, but that's at the top of my list. I think his skating isn't as bad as some people make it out to be. It's also how he can do everything while skating at top speed. Some players are better skater than him, but can't do half of what he does while skating. His shot is not a strength, at least not from distance, but I'm sure he's going to score goals in the NHL. Overall, one of the most well-rounded player in the draft with a great two-way game and an absolute threat with the puck on his stick. Extremely smart and skilled. I could convince myself of him over Fantilli because I prefer playmakers over shooters, but Fantilli's production this season was on another level and is meaner and a much better skater, so in the end, Fantilli won. And at number 3, I have Adam Fantilli. Like I was saying previously, Fantilli's production is on another level this season. 65 points in 36 games in the NCAA is exceptional. It's even better in terms of point per game than Jack Eichel. I think Jack Eichel was a better prospect at the time than Fantilli is now, but still amazing production. And I mean, look at Eichel now. He's the most productive player in the playoff on a Stanley Cup winning team. That's a hell of a bar to reach. Fantilli is the complete package. He's big, he's physical, he's a powerful skater, he can make plays, he can finish them, he's a two-way threat with elite offensive upside, and he proved it every single step of the way. Even though Michkov's ceiling is higher, I don't think there's even the smallest chance that the Ducks will pass on him. Fantilli has top 10, top 15 center in the league written all over him. And while he's extremely talented offensively, he's also a mean and physical player. He doesn't hit just to separate the puck from the player, he hits as hard as he can all the time. As much as he can play the finish game with his elite stick handling and shooting ability, as much as he can drive the middle consistently and create chaos shift after shift. He is amazing to watch. He's just as much a highlight reel machine as Smith, but for a different reason. He makes everyone around him better, just like Carlsson, but again, for a different reason. Just look at Brindley. He was getting nowhere for long stretches of game before he was put on Fantilli's line. So there's that. I've seen a lot of people talk about hockey sense negatively. I agree that it's not as high as the players around him in the draft, but does it really need to? When you have the game and the skill that he has, when you have the instinct and the frame that he has, what is it going to change really if he gets a grade higher or a grade lower? Nothing really. And it's not like it's bad or anything. His game never will be about solving the defense layers in front of him. Even if he had elite sense, he's way more direct than that. He would skate in the middle of the ice and create chaos to open space anyways. That's just who he is. I don't think Anaheim is concerned by that whatsoever. Fantilli is a beast, a high-end first overall selection in most drafts. Look, if I'm an NHL team, I take Fantilli at number 2, but I'm not. So I make rankings on who I think will become the best player. In my opinion, Michkov will most likely become the second best player in this draft. It's hard to see things develop any different than this. But for an NHL team, a big, mean center that can score and make plays with a good two-way game is probably more appealing than a small, extremely skilled one-way winger. Even if Michkov end up a 100 or 110 points player and Fantilli is a point-per-game center in the NHL, who's the most useful player between both? I think both sides have a real argument. I think we could argue that Fantilli will probably be more useful in the playoff, but again, Michkov could turn out to be like Kucherov, and it's safe to say that Kucherov played Conn Smythe-level hockey in the playoffs. So in that case, I just went with who I thought would have the most prolific career, and I think it's Michkov. No joke, Michkov is one of the most impressive draft-eligible player I have ever seen. I liked him so much that I just kept coming back to watch him just for the fun of it. I usually watch at least like 70% of the Habs games in a season, plus multiple games around the NHL, and basically all the 720p highlights from Sportsnets. I don't even think I watched 20 Habs games this season, and basically no NHL games outside of highlights. The reason for that is Michkov and Bedard. I just wanted to watch all the games, and obviously time is limited. From where I'm sitting, if Michkov played in the CHL, he would challenge Bedard for first overall. I still think Bedard would be the first pick even if Michkov was Canadian because he's further in his development in my opinion and is a better skater overall. Michkov is still in the figuring out phase of his limits. He isn't a fast skater on long distance, but he is a good skater with outstanding edges and deceptiveness and pretty quick in short bursts. Michkov is a goal scorer first, but throughout the season, his passing game evolved quite a lot. And since he has the sense to create for himself like he does using his line mates, there's no doubt he has the sense to create for others as well. It's just that on every team he was this season, he was always the go-to guy to score. It's not like Sochi would have scored goals if he wasn't there. They wouldn't. When he was loaned to them, he instantly became the best player on a KHL team. And I mean, he's been this good for a long time now. It's not like it's something new. He was even better than Bedard when they faced each other. This doesn't happen by mistake. If you want a more in-depth explanation on Michkov and his game, go watch my full scouting report on him, but understand that for Michkov and Bedard, no scouting report can ever do justice to how special they really are. You people cannot understand the disappointment that I feel every time that I hear reports that the Habs wouldn't draft him at 5 if he was there. I just hope it's not true. He's an elite level first overall talent, but teams have a chance to draft that kind of player at 4 or 5 or 6 or even later because of the current geopolitical situation and his contract with SKA. It's baffling to me that team could convince themselves to pass on him once the top 4 is gone. One way or another, I can't wait to see him in the NHL. And at number 1, like everyone else, I have Connor Bedard. Honestly, I'm just out of words right now. I have a full scouting report on him if you guys are interested in that. Obviously, his stats are out of this world this season with 143 points in 57 games, amazing playoff stats, and record-breaking production at the U20s. What else do you want? Bedard has everything but size at just under 5'10", but even at that size, he's unstoppable. His puck skills, his instinct, his shot is what stands out, and it stands out in a massive way. Those 3 attributes are already elite at the NHL level. The speed at which he processes the game is something I've never seen before. The reason why I didn't give a 9 to his hockey sense in the first place is, first, the defensive part of the game, and also because he's not that kind of thinker in my opinion. Bedard, he just goes in and adapts using all of his tools. He's not a chess player on the ice. He has the best adaptability I've ever seen from a draft-eligible player, which is why I said that he processes the game faster than I have ever seen. His puck skills are so good that players can't get the puck from him even if they have 3 players on him. He can make them miss one after another and shoot the puck or send it to a teammate with a pass that no one saw coming. His creativity is off the chart. His soft skills are off the chart. His shot is the best there is in the draft. He competes hard. He plays hard. He's a slam dunk at number 1. I personally think his career will be closer to a Patrick Kane type of player than a McDavid or a Draisaitl because, want it or not, he was measured at 5'9" 3/4 at the combine, so he lacks the generational speed and the size and strength of a player like McDavid. And Draisaitl is just a different beast. Every year in the NHLPA survey, he scores as the best passer in the NHL according to NHL players, and he also happens to be a multiple-time 50-goal scorer. Nonetheless, exciting times ahead for Chicago's fans. Anyway, people, I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know down in the comments what your top 10 looks like. I'm curious. See you in the next one. Peace.